It gives me great pleasure. It's a great privilege to stand before you and give a short introduction to Swami Vivekanand. Actually, Swami Vivekanand doesn't need an introduction to most Indians, but considering that we have a lot of youngsters in this group who probably have not heard of him, who probably know very little about him, I think at least for the benefit of the smaller kids in this group who are able to understand, I thought it's worth giving a short introduction. Unfortunately, it won't be a very short introduction because anything about Swami Vivekanand cannot be finished in 2 or 3 minutes. You can talk for days and days about Swami Vivekanand, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I'll try to cover all the key events and key dates that are concerned with Swamiji. So, Swamiji was born on the 12th of January in the year 1863 in Calcutta, and he was the son of a fairly wealthy family. His father was an attorney, and Swamiji's original name was Narendranath Datta, and his father was Vishwanath Datta, who was an attorney, a barrister in the Calcutta High Court, and his mother was Bhuvaneshwari Devi. She was a very devout woman, and in his younger days, Swamiji was already displaying a lot of the brightness and intelligence that we would see of him in the later days. He was very curious to know about a lot of different things, and he would ask a lot of questions even as a small child, and many of his questions people could not even answer. Those kind of brilliant questions he used to have on what is God, have you seen God, and all those things. And he was also so kind-hearted that if somebody comes and asks for any alms, like any beggars or anyone, he would, without thinking twice, he would donate even the valuable things from his house, and because of that he used to get scolded by his parents once in a while. So those were his early days, and being a very intelligent and very bright person, he went to the Presidency College of Calcutta. I mean, those days India had 3 Presidency colleges, one in Bombay, one in Calcutta, and one in Madras. And anybody who goes to the Presidency College is supposed to be the cream of society those days. So Swamiji was he graduated in honors from the Presidency College of Calcutta, and even from his early days he was very interested in our Vedic scriptures, and he had learnt a lot of the Vedas, Upanishads, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and he had learnt a lot of Sanskrit even in his younger days. And during his college days he got exposed to the Western philosophy, and he had read extensively on many of the Greek philosophers, the German philosophers of those times, Schopenhauer and all those. So he had a very strong grounding in both the Eastern philosophy and the Western philosophy, and coupled with a very questioning mind, a very sharp and keen mind. He was also a very active member of the Brahmo Samaj. Those days in the Calcutta was leading light for India those days. Calcutta was not only the political capital, it was also the economic and intellectual capital of India. So anybody who counted among the intellectuals in India, he would have to go to Calcutta to establish his name. So Brahma Samaj was one of those societies that somebody like Raja Ram Mohan Roy had founded, and Swamiji was a very active member of the Brahma Samaj. And while we are talking about Swamiji himself, we should also learn a little bit about how India was during that time. Swamiji was born in 1863, and it's a very significant year because it was just 6 years after the British had completely and comprehensively defeated all Indian kings in the famous 1857 mutiny. Those of you who know Indian history, India got independence in 1947, but 90 years before 1947, all the Indian kings who were opposed to the British rule had joined together and rebelled and fought against the British, but because they were not very united in their command and they lacked the kind of resources that the British had, they had all been defeated, and that is actually known as the First War of Indian Independence. And Swamiji's birth, just 6 years after that war ended, actually signifies a divine intervention in the history of India. And so around the time Swamiji was a budding youngster and preparing for his eventual mission, India was facing a lot of turmoil. not only from the political front but also from the economic and intellectual and spiritual front. You know, those were the days when the British Western education was on the ascendance, and anything which was Indian, anything which was native was being denigrated and looked down upon. So even a lot of so-called Hindu Indian-born intellectuals were known to be, you know, favoring Western type education and English medium education, and they were looking down upon anything that was Hindu. They were looking down upon Sanskrit. They were looking down upon our native culture, and the whole country was looking towards the Western world, and more specifically to the English-speaking England, for anything that was considered cultured and refined. So in that atmosphere, Indians by and large had been very dispirited, very demotivated. They began to think in inferior terms about their own culture, and even from a spiritual point of view, we were under a lot of criticism. Hinduism was being accused of being a religion of superstitions and so on. So a lot of ignorance about our own culture was spreading, and it is in this kind of background that somebody like Swami Vivekananda had to be coming in and restoring our own confidence in our religion and our culture. And as you would see from the later works of Swami Vivekananda, he actually acted like a booster motor for our culture. And I would even go to say that Swami Vivekananda provided a lot of inspiration for a lot of our freedom fighters later on. For instance, Balagangadhar Tilak wrote the Gita Rahasya when he was in the Mandalay jail, and I would go to say that it was by and large on the inspiration he received from people like Swami Vivekananda. And another of those independence fighters was Aurobindo himself. Aurobindo Ghosh later became the Aurobindo to found the Aurobindo order in Pondicherry. He was in his initial days he was a revolutionary, and people like Aurobindo Ghosh had drawn their inspiration from people like Swami Vivekananda. So this is jumping the gun, but let's come back to Swami Vivekananda. So around the time he was 18 or 19 years old, he somehow happened to be introduced to Swami Ramakrishna. And Ramakrishna Paramhamsa was already a known saint in those days, and he was having his headquarters in Dakshineshwar, which is very near Calcutta. And it so happened that Swami Ramakrishna was visiting and lecturing in somebody's house, and Vivekananda ji was also there, and that was their very first meeting. But subsequently, Swami Vivekananda, then Narendranath, visited Dakshineshwar quite a few times, and he was slowly drawn towards Ramakrishna ji, and he got inspired by Ramakrishna ji's teaching. And around 1884, Narendranath's, that is Swami Vivekananda's father, died all of a sudden, and at that point their entire family became more or less bankrupt, and Swamiji was struggling to restore the finances of the family. So at that point, his personal situation drew him even more closer to Swami Ramakrishna, and he is famed to have asked Ramakrishna, "Have you seen God? Have you met God in person?" was the question he would actually ask everyone, and this is the same question he had asked Swami Ramakrishna also. And then Ramakrishna told him, he showed him the there is a Kali temple there, Dakshineshwar. Dakshineshwar has a Kali temple. So he told Vivekananda, "Go to Kali and pray, and you ask for whatever you want." And Swami Vivekananda went to Kali thrice in prayer, and when he went, he intended to ask for a lot of wealth and money. But when he actually went and sat in front of Kali and prayed, he realized that he is not able to ask for money. Instead, he ended up asking for knowledge and salvation. So he went to Kali 3 times, and all the 3 times he came back without asking for money, and instead he came praying for knowledge and gyan. So that was the transformation that was happening to Swami Vivekananda under the able guidance of Swami Ramakrishna. And around 1886, Swami Ramakrishna had already developed cancer, and he was on his deathbed. At that time, he gave the saffron robes, the robes meant for a sannyasi, to Vivekananda and a few other disciples. And though at that point Swami Vivekananda did not officially take sannyas, sannyas is renunciation, the life of a monk. He took sannyas some 2 years later, But from that point itself, Swami Vivekananda had almost separated himself from his family life and his material life, and he had started moving in the path of spirituality. And during that time, and for 5 to 7 years after that, Swamiji went through a very intense education. He met a lot of scholars. He learned more of the Vedas and Vedanta and Upanishads. He became much more strong in his knowledge of the Hindu scriptures and the Hindu Shastras and so on. And then he established the Ramakrishna Mutt in a very small house because they were still struggling for money and all that.